Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, I'm Still Standing, Skills to Manage Stress and Burnout. My name is Shane McNally, Marketing Specialist with R3 Continuum, and I'll be helping moderate today's webinar. A couple quick housekeeping items to go over before we begin here. There are a handful of different widgets and pop-ups on the screen. You'll be able to find a Q&A widget, which you can ask questions throughout the whole webinar, technical issues or otherwise. You'll find our resource list, which offers a handful of links to various resources, as well as downloadable content, including the slide deck from today. There's also a link to register for our next webinar in October, a link to Workplace MVP, which is a podcast that R3 Continuum is proud to sponsor. And that podcast highlights organizations' most valuable professionals as they share their stories. Today's presentation is an R3C Live event. We'll be discussing stress and burnout and ways to help manage those feelings or prevent them in the future. So with that said, if you have any questions throughout the webinar that come up, feel free to ask them in the Q&A tab, and we'll address those questions if there's time at the end. Today, our subject matter expert is R3 Continuum Vice President of Crisis Response Clinical Services, Jeff Gorder. Jeff brings more than 30 years of clinical experience, including consultation and extensive on-site critical incident response to businesses and communities. He has responded directly to the September 11th terrorist attacks, Hurricane Katrina, Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting, the Newtown tragedy, and the Las Vegas shooting, just to name a few. So, Jeff, thank you for being here with us today. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's excited to hear more on this important topic.
Thanks so much, Shane. I appreciate it. And thank all of you for carving out some time in your schedules for this topic. And, you know, Shane, as you were saying, I'm not the first to address this. This is clearly the topic of the day. This is something that is on everybody's hearts, everybody's minds. Over the past 18 months, I am pretty sure that many of you in attendance here today have probably heard other webinars, a TED Talk, a podcast, something you've looked up online to try and manage the unmanageable that we have found ourselves in over these last 18 months. And my hunch is you've heard some pretty excellent strategies. You've probably already begun to use those. You may already have a list as strategies that you have been using to manage the stress. And while I plan on giving you some takeaways, I plan on giving you some ideas, some things you can do this afternoon if you so choose, I really wanted to just not give you another list of 10 things to do. Here's your top 10 things that you ought to try now. I want to give you more to do when you already have more than you can do. My hope is to give you, in a sense, a different way of thinking about this, which in and of itself, if we think of the problem in a different way, perhaps that will free up a little bandwidth and will empower us to think in a different way about this, using the strategies we're already perhaps employing and getting more value out of them.
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this, and I think we have a pretty large crowd that's looking forward to it today as well. So let's kind of start. How did we get here?
I know this is one of those Captain Obvious sort of moments. I just want to kind of level set and remind us all of the unprecedented series of challenges we have faced in the last year and a half. Obviously, and still most prominent, most dominating the horizon is COVID-19 global pandemic, the multiple waves that have come all across the globe that continue to challenge us here in the U.S. and that it continues to have hot spots in various areas, various regions, various states, various cities. And so clearly that is the backdrop to everything else we're going to talk about. But also, I think sometimes, we sort of stumble ahead and just keep thinking about the next crisis, but we have forgotten how much of our time, energy, and focus was on the civil unrest, the racial tensions that occurred and continue to occur following the murder of George Floyd last year in May, and that continues to require attention and emotional energy for so many of us. Add to that the political tensions that occurred, and I know it's hard to go on to a news source and not see something that references the breaching of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th of this year, and those political tensions continue to bubble under the surface and draw energy and attention away from us. Also, add to that out west, this is yet another season, 2 seasons running, of record wildfires across the U.S. and other sort of climate-oriented situations that occur, plus the frequent and intense tropical storms, the flooding activity, the intensity of tornadoes and rains that have occurred all across the U.S. All of those things have struck many of us in different times, in different ways, and perhaps frequently over the course of this time. Now, add to that, it's not as if life said, you know what, you got enough on your plate, I'm going to take a break here, we're going to give you a pass on some. No, the regular stuff of life still continues. The things that are much more personal yet seem much more powerful, and often are, than these larger global issues. Things like the healthcare of my loved ones, things like relationship issues, things like health challenges outside of COVID-19. All of that adds up to a tremendous amount of cumulative stress.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a wild ride the last couple of years, and like you said, it all adds up and is kind of cumulative stress. And can you kind of expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so cumulative stress, I think it's best to think about it as the chronic ongoing accumulation, the stacking, if you will, the accumulation of stress factors. So you add to that, cumulative stress typically occurs when there are multiple events that occur, when they happen in a short or extended period of time. They are kind of proximate to each other in time. When there is little opportunity for recovery or resolution between the events. And almost universally, when you are faced with these situations, when we're faced with a singular crisis, we may say, okay, that was tough, but I feel like I was able to do some things. When they stack up like this, oftentimes these situations leave us feeling powerless, hopeless, helpless. What am I supposed to do? I didn't even feel like I caught my breath from the last one, and yet here it is again. And so some of the signs of cumulative stress beginning to build up, periods of physical exhaustion, first, foremost, and obviously, where we're just simply weary in the face of the emotional and often physical challenges. The physical signs, and by physical, it's what we often call somatic complaints. Somatic, which means, what is my body telling me? The physical things like, again, the exhaustion is one key element to it. It could also be muscle tension. It could be things like migraine headaches. It can be stomach upset or GI issues. All of those are indications of my body saying, I am stressing out here. I've had as much as I can have. Add to that the emotional roller coaster of emotions going up, down, and every which way. The emotional challenges of sadness, of anger, of anxiety, of anticipatory anxiety. What else is going to happen? What other shoe might possibly drop? And all of the emotional range that occurs with that. For many of us, there's a cognitive change. And by that, I mean almost a personality change, where the stress has made us almost numb, kind of cold and calloused to the issues around us, to the challenges being faced. And I'm having a hard time where I might ordinarily have been highly compassionate. I might have been motivated. I might have said, oh my goodness, I would have at the very least felt an emotional connection to this. And it's like I'm becoming numb to it. I just simply can't muster the emotional strength to care, it seems. And that leaves us with quite a bit of dissonance, the idea that, wait a second, that's not me. That's not how I normally am. And then in a workplace setting, it often shows up in a sense of burnout or dissatisfaction with work, even if the stress is unrelated to work. Catch that the cumulative stress and the burnout may show up at work because of legitimate workplace challenges, of issues and dynamics in a workplace that could lead one to burnout. But it could also be that all the outside stress outside of work is just sucking so much of my bandwidth, so much of my energy, that work ends up becoming dissatisfied. End up feeling a sense of burnout at work. And so all of this to say that cumulative stress is real, and it's certainly legitimate. But it is more than just the events that drive it. It's like, there's kind of if these events could just go away, then all the stress would evaporate. But I want to challenge all of us to think about this, that it's not just the events that drive it. It is my interpretation, my reflection on this event. It's what I think it means that in many ways drives or accentuates the stress. For example, if I were to say, this is awful and it's never going to get any better, that's an interpretation. If I say there is absolutely nothing I can do to make this any better, that's an interpretation. If I say I just can't take any more, that is an interpretation. Even as I stand here, even as I realize somehow I did manage to take it, I did manage to move forward. I did take some steps forward. It's not in the same place. Somehow I managed it. And that's an interpretation. So as you'll see as we go through this, the events are the events. The events don't change. The events are the events. It's my interpretation that opens the door and often determines what I can do in response and where I go from there. It's up to us.
Yeah, that was you're completely right. And kind of going off of that, especially when you were talking about the emotions, you and I have talked about this survey that we were reading, just last week. Can you kind of dive into what we found on the survey? And I know we'll talk about it a few times, I believe, through this webinar, but just start out with kind of the emotions.
Yeah, because I want to, again, I've been talking in sort of a higher level, sort of global perspective. I want to bring it down to the workplace. And this was a very fascinating research study that came out. The Gallup poll, the Gallup organization conducted a scientific research survey, a poll. And out of that, they compiled a research report called The State of the Global Workplace in 2021. And what they identified, they asked all the participants just to try and identify what kind of emotions are you experiencing. And 48% of the participants said, I experience worry on a daily basis. 57% identified stress as a day-to-day occurrence. 22% identified anger, how that stress shows up in an angry response as well. And 26% of them identified experiencing sadness on a day-to-day basis. So again, I want to be clear here. I am not in any way minimizing or dismissing the challenges that we faced and the emotional power that we've gone through. But this poll also, as I looked through it, I discovered some further interesting things.
Yeah, and I think here's some of that that we were going to talk about here.
Yeah. Because what it highlighted for me is it would be easy to look at that and say, well, okay, work is stressful. Work is the source of the stress. It's being employed. It's being at work that is driving this. However, what I saw in there was some things that led me to conclude, is work the source of the stress, or is it potentially the cure? Is it potentially one element that can help increase our resilience, our buoyancy in the face of this? So here's some things. Let me just kind of walk through this. That same Gallup poll that showed those four emotions showed that 48% of the U.S. workforce is right now actively looking to change jobs. Almost half of us are looking to change employment to get a new job, which begs the question, why? Why is this happening? Is this a, what is the problem that what this has come to be called the Great Resignation? They've even termed it that, the Great Resignation. What is it that the Great Resignation is trying to solve? What is the issue? What do we think would be better if I left? And is this, what I have often called the geographic cure, that if I were to change my job, change my location, change my city, change my state, change my hairstyle, then everything would be better? If I were to just change something and go somewhere else, then, that if I change location, that's going to be the thing that fixes it, the geographic cure. I think that's a variation of the classic grass is greener on the other side of the fence kind of fantasy. The idea that if I just move somewhere, that'll look better. I think that this poll, again, offered a clue. Some of the additional stats here offered a clue, because that same poll indicated that 66% of the U.S. workers right now feel disengaged. And I want to just step back a second and define, well, what is engagement? And in an employee perspective, in an employment perspective, engagement is the level of involvement and enthusiasm an employee feels in their work or workplace. That makes sense. That's how engaged I am. I'm excited. I'm involved. I'm enthused. I am focused, and I am happy to be here. I'm glad to have employment. That is engagement. And so, again, in an employee context, that directly correlates with factors such as productivity, safety, customer satisfaction, turnover, things that have direct business metrics involved with them. And so people have long studied the idea of employee engagement in the workforce. So it's interesting that 66% of us feel disengaged. Now here's something. Paradoxically, 56% express confidence that they will be living their best possible life within the next 5 years. That is to say, they asked a question on a 10-point scale, with 1 being, this is the worst possible life I can live, and 10 being the best possible life I can live. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? 56% envision themselves thriving, involved, enthusiastic at the workplace. They had confidence that within the next 5 years, they're going to be living their best possible life. Despite everything that's going on right now, that group of individuals, of employees, was able to envision a positive future. And I think that is the key. That is the clue. That's the answer here, that employees are looking for engagement in the workplace. They are looking for meaning, for purpose during a chaotic time. In short, they are looking for hope. And that engagement is a direct connection, a great reflection of the hope of the U.S. worker and where they can go from here. So I just found that incredibly encouraging, and not a surprising reflection of the resilience that I have come to see so many times in the U.S. workforce.
Yeah, I love that answer of hope. You know, people are looking for that, and they're looking forward to that, living their best life in the next 5 years. I love that phrase there. Mm-hmm. So moving on here, kind of going towards what employees are maybe looking for.
Yeah. So follow me here, because I want to begin with the fact that you don't know what you don't know until you know it. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And by extension, you can't change what you don't know until you know it. So what can we do? What can we as individuals begin to do to change this? And I want to highlight that there are certain things we can do to the degree that we begin to pay attention, when we become mindful of what's going on around us. And mindfulness is kind of a therapy buzzwordish way of saying paying attention to what my body is saying physically, paying attention to what I'm saying to myself and to those around me, and pay attention to what's going on around me. When I begin to notice the small moments of positive action, when I begin to celebrate the little victories. So when I begin to pay attention to what's going on around me, I can then begin to plot specific actions. I can then exercise my coping skills. There's 1,000 different ways to handle it once I know what it is I'm trying to handle. And so we have to begin with paying attention. And what I want to dive into with our remaining time is what things we can do on that physical side, what my body is saying, and then what we can do on that cognitive side, that interpretive side that I talked about before, how we can influence our interpretations.
Yeah, that's that list. So let's get started with kind of the physical side here.
Yeah. And so it's human nature that when we are in discomfort, when we're in pain, when we are in a difficult situation, We want a quick, easy, immediate answer. I want this to go away right now, and I want one thing to fix it. Isn't there one answer? Isn't there a silver bullet? Isn't there some way to make this all go away right now? And there is, unfortunately, no magic answer. There is no quick and easy way to do it. It's just slow and steady maintenance. It's about progress, not perfection. I'm able to manage this. If I look at this from a maintenance perspective, I got to remember that, okay, first and foremost, I need to attend to the basics of my physical needs. I need to make sure that I am getting enough healthy food, that I am staying hydrated, getting enough fluid, that I am trying to maintain my sleep patterns as best I can, rest, taking breaks during the course of my day, that attending to these basic things seems, again, trivial and common sense. Well, of course, but think about it. How many times have you gone through the day and said, okay, when's the last time I drank some water instead of coffee? You know, how often am I going to turn to, donuts and Haagen-Dazs as the thing that gets me through, or skip yet another lunch because I've been working so hard and it's so difficult to set a regular pattern when I'm working remotely from home? You know, so again, these basic things are absolutely essential. We've got to start with that, because if we don't, we simply become exhausted. We have no energy left to do the next right step. And so simply taking care of these basic things is the very beginning. But now next, I really want to stress, again, something that's going to seem simplistic, but movement, physical movement, because physical movement is a direct contradiction to that emotional interpretation that says I'm hopeless, helpless, I'm frozen, there's nothing I can do. Physical movement generates not only physical momentum, it generates emotional momentum. If I can begin to work in physical activity, physical movement into the course of my day on a regular basis, research is very clear that is energizing, empowering, and it provides us with more emotional energy than we might think from simply taking a walk. Now, what I want to highlight here is something that I call the rule of 7. Some of you may have heard this, which is to say, if I am looking to institute a new activity, a new practice in my life, that the rule of 7 is helpful. And I want to highlight to you the things that, for many of you who have ever done a New Year's Eve resolution where you say, okay, I'm going to start exercise. I'm going to exercise every day. And I might do it 1 day, 2 days, maybe even 3 if it's a really good year. And then I say, this isn't having the end result I want. This isn't making any difference. And I kind of lose track of it. And it's like, I tried, but it just didn't help. I gave it all of 3 times. So the rule of 7 is a pattern that I think is very effective, that if the rule of 7 says, if I do something 7 times, I begin to have familiarity. If I do it another 7 times, 14, I begin to have some level of mastery over it. And if I do it another 7 times, 21 times, I'm beginning to make it a routine. It is now part of my regular practice. And the point is, I have to do it longer than I think I should. More than 3 times. If I do it 21 times, if I begin to do these activities on a regular basis for 21 days in a row, it's beginning to have an impact and it's beginning to become part of my routine. What activities? 1, during work, I encourage folks to, once an hour, whether it's for 5 minutes or even if it's just a couple of minutes, stand up, stretch, walk around the office, walk around your house, walk around the block, whatever you can do, but simply standing up and stretching on a regular periodic basis, doing that once an hour is incredibly energizing, gets you back into the ability to focus once again. Outside of work, doing things like a regular walk, running, biking, sports, it doesn't have to be rigorous cardiovascular, even just a gentle walk for as long as physically feels comfortable to you, has, again, the ability to rebalance all of the neurochemicals that we've generated as a result of this stress. And it helps get me back on balance once again. And then finally, I want to highlight minimizing disruptions as best as you can. Research is very clear that disruptions, having the toddler come in, having the pet run by, having the TV on while I'm trying to work remotely, we've gotten kind of used to it. And we've just kind of maybe gotten a little casual with it. And in many ways, those disruptions take time and energy from us. So those are the physical things. But I want to move on to the kind of the interpretive, the cognitive things, as I said. And by that, I want to challenge us to bring ourselves to work. And by that, I mean own our own engagement. You know, if you were to Google engagement in the workforce, what you're going to find is a lot of material about how leaders, how executives can encourage and inspire and regulate or bring about greater engagement about their workforce. And that is absolutely true. Leaders have a key role. A healthy workforce has leaders who know and understand and are committed to improving the engagement of the workforce. But while leaders have a role, why would I want to give up my own agency? Why would I want to sit and passively wait until someone else fixes it for me, until someone else makes me satisfied about my work? Can I own my own engagement and take specific actions to improve my involvement, my enthusiasm, my thriving in the workplace? And so one thing I want to challenge us is, remember that question about within 5 years, I'm going to be living my best life. I'd like to challenge each of us to imagine what that best life in 5 years looks like for you. Really think about that in detail. What will I be doing? How will I be feeling? What kind of actions will I be taking? And is there any of that I can start doing now, that I can start doing in the present, that I don't have to wait 5 years for things to get a little bit better? Can I start doing some of it right now? And some of that might be intentionally exercising agency, that idea of choice, that I am a agent in my own life and those around me. Can I intentionally exercise agency when I can? Can I make positive choices on my own behalf, on behalf of others around me, family and coworkers? Can I do things that will improve? And express gratitude. Again, research is solid that when we specifically and intentionally express gratitude for the things going around, when I realize I'm still standing, I'm still here, after 18 months with all that we've faced and all that we've gone through, are there things that I can be thankful for? How have I endured? What have I learned? How have I grown? How am I different from before all of this happened? And can I find some things that I can be grateful for, that I can personally, directly be thankful because of where I am now, because I'm still standing? And work can be a part of that. Work is a source of structure, of meaning, of predictability. And there is tremendous power in purpose. So I want to challenge us to define that personal purpose. What does that look like for you? For some people, when they go to work, they, at the end of the day, I got to look at myself in the mirror and I've got to ask the question, did I do everything I could do today? Did I perform with excellence? Did I do my best? Did I leave everything on the field, as they say in sports? Despite the challenges, that is purpose. Say, whatever I do, I want to do it to the best of my ability. Is it, I might say, yeah, but I'm in a job that doesn't feel particularly passionate, where I don't plan on being in this job for the next 30 years. I get it. Very few of us do. However, what I do today directly determines what that future job is going to look like, what jobs I'm going to get, what business practices and habits I've developed that I'm going to bring into it. So do I want to do my best today as a way of saying this is positioning me for my preferred job and career trajectory, maybe that best life in 5 years that we talked about? That is purpose. Is it, at the end of the day, if nothing else, being able to say, you know what, I've provided stability for myself, financial stability, emotional stability, career stability for myself, for my loved ones, for those around me? Is doing my best something that is in and itself empowering? Determine what that looks like for you and recognize your interpretation of that can take you towards that resilient future.
So we're almost to the 30-minute mark here. So we'll wrap it up. And I see there's a couple questions in, and I just want to hop in real quick, Jeff. This webinar will be on demand. So it will be, you can replay this. There should be an email coming out in the next day or so where you can rewatch this. But I will toss this back over to you, Jeff.
Sure. So as we kind of come to a conclusion, I just want to recognize that Martin Luther King Jr., he understood that work is not just about a paycheck. Work has the power to lift us above our circumstances and can point the way to hope and a future. And so I end with two quotes. This work, first off, this quote: "No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence." That is power and purpose. But the next quote, this is my MLK twofer, because it so eloquently expresses the moment that we're in right now, that, as he said, if you can fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. And that's my hope, my challenge, my encouragement to all of you today. Keep moving forward, step by step. We will get through this.